Hey everyone, welcome back. In this episode we're going to talk about setting up solutions projects, how to configure running projects, debugging, etc. If you want to try out Writer, installation instructions are in the description and the extension code is also there to extend your trial period to 3 months. Now, first of all, you're going to see this screen and essentially all you want to do is you want to click New Solution and let's set up a solution. So on your left here you have the main categories. And I think it's a little bit easier than Visual Studio, where you have a ton of templates, and you will have like 3 Espina core templates, and one's for C#, one for F#, and one for VB. Here you pick a category, and then you configure whatever you need about this project. So let's go ahead and call the solution name something like test. And the project name, I'll just call it 1 for now. Then you pick the solution directory. You can opt in into using a repository. I'm not going to pick that. And then you can choose the SDK type. So if you want to use 2.2 or 3.1, whichever one you want. I'm going to stick with 3.1, the type. And again, this would be each individual project template in Visual Studio. You pick whichever template suits you. I'm going to start with an empty one. The language, again, you have C# and F#. And then you can pick the framework, and that is going to change depending on which SDK you select. And here you can either pick 2.2 or 2.1, and as I said before, I'll stick with 3.1, right? So this is pretty much straightforward. You are rarely going to be using this configuration. You're just going to select a project from here, and you're going to input something like test and the name of the solution and create, and off you pop. Okay, so once we are in our in the main Writer IDE, on the left is our project, and here is the one project. So if you haven't watched my keybind videos, it's essentially, let's say we want to add another project. We can right click, add new project, we can add solution folders, we can add existing projects, and we can attach existing folders. Now, attaching existing folders is something specific, and it doesn't do what you I think not exactly what you expect, but essentially the primary top 3 buttons is what you will want to be concerned with: creating a new project, adding an existing project, and then basically creating a solutions folder. So let's go ahead and add a new project. I'm gonna be using Alt Insert, which is essentially a shortcut to add a new file, and if you're navigating to the solution, you're going to be adding it for a solution. So if I go down here and I press Alt Insert, I can then choose whichever file, and this is you can just start typing here and here as well. So let's say I want a new project, I can go ahead and type that in. Let's say I want a class library, I will just call it lib for now. And again, the framework, whatever you need to select, I want it to be .NET Standard 2.1, since I'm using .NET Core 3.1, right? Let's add that. And let's go ahead and actually add another project. So, let's say new project. And this time I want a unit test project. I'm going to go ahead and select XUnit because the other 2 options shouldn't even be there. And again, this is going to be a 3.1 app, and I'm going to be calling this lib.tests. And I'm going to create this. Okay, so if you've ever worked on big solutions, you're going to have a lot of projects, you're going to have a lot of files, and one of the cool things you can do, and this option also exists in Visual Studio, although a little bit obscured with all the buttons and menus in the solution, but essentially you have these 4 buttons here. First one is minimize, so you want to if you just want to hide the menu. You can also do it with whichever keybind you bounded. So if you haven't watched my key setup and key binding video, go ahead and watch that. I explained that there. But essentially, you can either collapse everything, or you can open the currently opened file. You can zoom in on a solution, right? So if you have like 1,000 files open, you can see exactly where it is and navigate to it that way. So we sort of have application projects and we have test projects, right? So basically, what you want to do is you want to create solutions for these then. So you would have something like src, and then you would grab your one project and your lib project, and you would move it into your src file, or sorry, src folder, and then you would add a new solution folder, and you would call it something like tests or test, and you would put the test project there, and maybe you want a docs folder as well, right? But we don't have it. So another thing about like packages and stuff like that, you will see either a NuGet package option down here, and whichever NuGet package you want to install, you essentially click on it, and then you can see for the projects that you want to install it individually, the plus button on the top here will essentially install it in all projects. I'm not concerned with adding NuGet packages right now. You can also do, if you don't have this window, you can go to Control-Shift-A. These are actions. I think the default one, yeah, for all will be like double shift, but essentially in actions or in all, you can just go ahead and type in NuGet. And you might even see the keybind that it has there, but essentially this will go ahead and open this window. And it's not specific to the project itself, because when you pick whatever package you want to install, you can already see any projects that you want to add it to, right? So another thing is we might want to be able to add a reference to this lib folder to this test. So let's go ahead and add reference, and from here we can go ahead and select this lib project, and it would be added to this test project, right? So let's go ahead, add that. And same with one, we want one to be utilizing the library, right? So we're gonna add reference to lib and press OK. Another condition you might find yourself in is if you're working on older projects, you might have like stray dlls where on the target machine you would register them to install them in the comms library, but here you might put them somewhere in a folder, and then you would have to add a reference, and you can click on this add from file, and this is essentially where you will go and try to find wherever this DLL is in the folders or whatever, and use it that way. And then once you're deploying it to that machine, because it's registered, you will be able to use it. So we essentially now know how to basically organize our file to a basic extent. I don't think there is too much to it. Also, I guess it's worth mentioning you can swap between solution and file system. Here's where you will be able to see your solution file and do whatever with it. So nice little quick way to do it. Let's go ahead and actually run one of these solutions. So one is our program, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and rename it to API for my next example. So you can either press Ctrl-Shift-R on the project itself, or right-click refactor this, which is what the keybind does. And again, if you want to know about how I set up the keybinds and useful keybinds, go ahead and watch that video. But also you can just put F12, and let's go ahead and rename it to the API. I'll say rename root namespaces as well. Next. And there we go. It's renamed the namespace. It has basically renamed the project, etc. All is good. Let's go ahead and run this, right? So on the top here, in top right, is basically your configuration for how you are going to run this project. And the main window I'm concerned with is this one. I want to go ahead, edit configurations, and on the left here, you will be able to see your current configurations for this project. I'm going to remove the current ones we have. They don't matter right now. And these are all the templates for configurations that you can have. So what I want to do first is essentially I just want to run my API program, right? And the default templates you saw there will essentially do the same thing, but sometimes you will want to set these up because your project might be bigger, etc. So this is how you do. You want to first basically pick whichever configuration you need. I'm going to use this .launch settings profile, and this UI is a little bit trickier. It's the only thing here is that you don't create it straight on this window. This is essentially just viewing of the template. So you look at it, and if you press OK, you don't essentially get any configuration. What you want to do is you want to create a configuration, and then this will get assigned to your solution, right? So once we picked a template, we want to create configuration in the top right corner of this window, and then it will get added to our solution. And this is where we want to say, basically, right, let's run our API, pick whichever project we need to pick, whatever target framework, and launch profile. You will essentially get to here. IIS Express is your IIS Express, and this project option is essentially as if you would just run the .NET run command. Okay, I'm gonna go for IIS Express, and also if you want to run your application in with HTTPS, it will essentially ask you automatically. And this launch settings.json here is how you would configure there. So if you have HTTPS options, it would essentially ask you if you need the certificate installed. So it's very kind in that way. Another thing down here is for more advanced options, but do note that this is here. This is essentially something like if you need to execute certain command line tools before running your project, you can configure this down here, right? So this is essentially whatever pipeline you need to run before running your project, like maybe stop some processes, do some seeding, whatever you need to do, you run that. But essentially, the top three options are what you're concerned with. Select the project, the target framework, and whatever launch profile you need, right? And then you can set the environment variable if you're concerned with that, or pass arguments if you're maybe running a command line tool or something like that. So yeah, and then select your browser, but I'm not concerned too much with that. Let's go ahead and just create this. Okay, and now we have the API, so we can either run it or debug it. Both of them do what is expected, so let's go ahead and put a breakpoint in our startup here. So if we just go ahead and run it, I can do Control F5, but let's go ahead and just click the button. So here's the project. So if I refresh, we don't hit the breakpoint. If I run it with the debugger, it will also obviously hit the breakpoint. But one thing to note here is usually debugging is a little bit slower. So what I tend to do is I tend to just run the application. And let's say I want to add something and I refresh. Unlike in Visual Studio, it doesn't reload automatically. One thing is on this run window here that will pop up once you're running this project, or this arrow here to rerun your project. Once you have many running side by side, it will be a different story, but let's go ahead and grab this API project. We'll rerun it, so it will stop the process, start it again, and a way to sort of rerun your projects. And then basically for my development cycles, I use this, and it's very convenient. But then sometimes I'll run into an issue where I need to debug. So this is where I will go to the run window on the top on the very top bar, and this is where I will attach the process. And this is a very convenient way to just go ahead and select the process here, and it will usually tell you all the processes that you can attach to. And this .NET Core process, it will show you the DLL which is running, so you can easily pick which process you want to attach to. So let's go ahead and attach to this process. So the debugger is attached, and if we go back here and we refresh, we will now see us hit this breakpoint. And same as in Visual Studio, if you hover over variables, you will be able to basically click on them. You can also, the icons, you can basically set them as bookmarks or kind of like favorites kind of thing. It will take a bit of time to get used to the new icons that are displayed here compared to Visual Studio, but again, these are just variable names and navigating to properties and whatever you need to do here. Also the locals or watch window, you get it here automatically. So if you ever watch my videos, sometimes when I debug, I always lose this window, but here it's always here and available, so that is very nice. There's also this memory option where you can load all the classes. I haven't taken use of it that much, but I guess this can be very good for if you're using .cover to decompile a DLL, and then you can essentially use this to reverse engineer applications. Alright, so this memory option can be very useful in that sense. Alright, so let's say we're done debugging. Very nice. I don't want my program to run slow. If you click stop on the process itself, on this debugger process, what it will do is it will essentially stop the debugger. And if we go back, you will see this little blue dot here. That means the application is running. So if we still refresh, we just basically remove the debugging session. The application is still running. So if we actually want to stop, we click the red button. And then if we try refresh, it will essentially, what's called, timeout, or like the server no longer exists, right? So the main thing here to think about it is the way it runs the application is separate from the debugging process. And how I like to do it is essentially spin up my application. If I need to debug, attach to the process, and then detach, and then basically it runs faster that way. Now that we essentially know how to run, set up configurations, and debug, and again, the UI and the options that you get are not much different. There are convenience and getting used to points there, but essentially it's still the same experience. Now, another big thing I found about Writer is when developing some solutions, I had multiple projects running, and in Writer it seemed a lot easier to sort of organize that. So to give you an example of that, let's say you're going to be working on a spa with an API and maybe a content distributing network. So let's go ahead and add a new project. I'm going to pick just a class library and I will call this a view app. I'm just going to create it, and this is just so it conveniently displays in this solution structure. And all I want to do in here is, again, if you watch my keybind setup, essentially I want to open the terminal here. So I'm going to press Ctrl Alt Space, maybe clear this so it looks normal. And this will essentially send my CLI into this project right here. And all I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to say view create view app. And I just want to set up a new view application, right? So I'm going to say, let's just grab the default because this is not a view tutorial. We just want to get the project set up. And I'm actually going to delete this class because I don't want it there. Okay, so once this has installed, essentially what I want to achieve is launching my API and the view app at the same time and having them work side by side. And this might as well include some other projects like a content distributed network or maybe some other services that need to run in the background, right? We just want to launch everything. So let's go ahead to edit configurations again. And in the templates, what I will grab is the compound template. And this is essentially combines a bunch of templates that you want and runs them together. So let's go ahead create this, and I'm just going to call this as my solution. So test. So I'm going to be running this. And what I want to do is now if I add the insert button here, I can go ahead and add the API project. We can click apply for now. Now what I also want to do now is run my view application. So let's go into templates and select the NPM option. And again, don't click OK, don't start filling this out. We just want to confirm that these are the options that we want. And let's just create configuration for now. The name that I'm going to give it is I'm going to say view, since this is meant to run my view application. And from here you can select your package.json, which is going to be conveniently given to you. And now you can grab the command, and usually it will find whichever commands are in your package.json there. And now that we have selected the package.json and the run command, you also get a drop down here where you can select it, whichever commands are available in your package.json, or you can just type them out, right? And I just want to run a serve, so it would be equivalent to the command of npm run serve. And again, same as here, you get the options to do additional configuration before you actually run the project. But this will be good for me, so I'm going to click apply here. And what I want to do now is go into my compound project setup, and I want to add my view run, right? So I'm going to launch my API and I'm going to run my view. And again, any other profile that you set up for any other application in your project, you can just add it to here and it will all run at the same time. Let's click apply, let's click OK. Let's make sure test is selected here, and let's press run test. Okay, first my API will launch, and in the background as well, in the run tab, I will now have multiple tabs open. And here is where my view application is building, and once that's built, I can go ahead and open it in Chrome and basically develop side by side. So let's go ahead, open that, and you can see I have both solutions open. And again, this is just a very convenient way to run your project. And for me, from my experience in Writer, this experience has been a lot better than Visual Studio of setting up multiple projects to run of different types and then just basically executing them. And that is basically my take. And again, the projects, they don't get restarted on all cumulatively. You may have like 5 projects. You then basically you can go into like the debugger and attach to a certain process. So if you have like 3 .NET applications, you can attach to whatever process it is individually. And then once you're done there, you can go ahead and close the debugger without actually relaunching all the applications, etc. Right? So it's a very like sort of fine-grained selective process. Everything's running. You attach if you need to, and then you disattach. Once you're ready to look at the changes, you rerun just that one project instead of rerunning the whole solution, or when you need to debug, you have to debug the whole solution, because Visual Studio only provides you with running multiple projects and not that fine-grained at project level kind of thing. But yeah, this will be it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe. Don't forget to join the Discord server. Don't forget to use the extension code. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments. Any suggestion, any other cool things you know about Writer, leave them in the comments for other people to know. Tell me how your experience was, and hopefully I'll see you in other episodes.